I want to welcome you guys back to class today. I hope you figured out how to navigate my message along with the slides and you're doing okay with our lessons. If you guys feel like you need a Zoom session with me, just let me know and I'll be glad to set those up for you. And I hope even more important than that, I hope you're doing okay health-wise. Today in class, we're going to discuss three different things. In your academic notes, we're talking about sources. There are so many sources we can find, so we'll talk about credibility of sources and what is more valuable sources, as well as the different databases that you can use to find different articles for this class. Also during academic notes, I'm going to give everybody some Turnitin resources along with the link to the Google Doc where you will sign up for Friday conferences with me. So, academic notes. On this slide, the main thing I want you to get out of this slide is to understand the difference between a primary source and a secondary source. So please look at some of the samples on the source, as well as use the quiz at the top of the page where it says click here. It will also give you some scenarios to distinguish whether or not primary sources, whether a source is primary or secondary. Just an overall comment about primary and secondary sources. The higher up you go in your college work, you will be required to use more and more primary sources over secondary sources. And the whole thing about a primary source is the authorship. Most primary sources are written by the experts in the field, whereas secondary sources are written by good writers. On this slide, the main thing to take away is that all sources are not created equal. If you look at the first row, you'll notice there are different types of sources there. Some of them, as you look over the list, you'll be able to see that, again, they're written by good writers. And there's good and bad with almost every source that you use. For example, a textbook is usually outdated, about 3 years behind the time by the time it is finally uploaded and put into a book format. Internet is much better, but you need to question again who your authorship is. So look over the different categories on this slide as well. Once you've done that, you can go to slide number 5, where it asks you to evaluate some sources that I put on here, 1 being completely unreliable and 5 being trustworthy. Finally, to me, the most important slide to put in your academic notes are the links to the different databases that we'll be using throughout the semester, and you guys can certainly use these databases in all of your other class. We will constantly use Utah Online Library that has scholarly collections in them, and they recently changed the username and password, so I've updated it on this slide. JSTOR is a lot of educational materials. I used JSTOR a great deal when I was working on my master's project. It's very expensive, but we can link to JSTOR through our Harriman Media site by using that username and password. And then finally, Salt Lake Community College also allows you as students to access their library resources online, as well as check out books in their library if you would like to do so. Finally, each of you, depending on what class you are in, are going to sign up for Turnitin. I don't know if you've done that before. If you're confused about Turnitin, you might want to send me an email. I can explain it better. In a couple class periods, we will actually go to the site. But once you go to Turnitin, it will ask for you to insert a class ID and an enrollment key. So depending on the class that you are in, use the numbers that are listed in the table. And then finally, when you click on the bottom of the screen where it says click here, it will take you to my sign-up sheets for conferences for the semester. There are a few dates that I'm actually going to come in on B days And I've told everyone that they need to sign up for 3. I think we'll only be able to get through 2. So at this point, pick 2 days that work for you. Put your name on I created the doc. Hopefully it works so that all of you can be editors and just put your name on the dates that work for you. All right, the second part of class. In class, we'll be dividing it into groups and having a discussion on Utah women in politics by using their annotated articles from last time. I hope, because you are at home, unfortunately, you don't get to be a part of that discussion. But one of the things I want you to take away from the articles, you may have noticed, our culture does play a big role, for better or worse, in women and higher education. I think the shift is slowly changing, but to be dead last in the nation for higher education and the number of women who graduate from college, it's kind of a scary wake-up call. That's why I use those articles. So I hope you enjoyed reading them and have seen from the 2010 to the 2018, there has been a subtle shift in emphasis towards higher ed. All right, so now going into today's lesson. What I've done is I've taken each of the topics of the last 4 days, including today's, and put them on this slide so that students can understand that we're just not talking about 4 different things in general or in specific things that are unrelated. They really are all related to each other because they are requiring you to be a better thinker. On day 1, we talked about understanding how we learn. And on day 2, looking at writing from a perspective of being a better writer through the semester, rethinking reading, learning what's different about college reading as compared to high school reading. And finally today, becoming more open with our minds of perspectives. It is such a critical thing when we talk about social issues throughout the semester and throughout life, to step back and look at social issues that surround us from a person's perspective different than our own. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So here are a couple slides. You can slow down and look at them to lead into the topic. What I've done for the last 3 years is I've taken kind of a news story of the day and wanted to show you how our news stations tell the same story and spin it depending on how they want the reader to feel. From liberal to conservative viewpoints, I think we'll all realize that our news agencies are not so fair and objective like they profess to be. And you can see the same news story in each of the years on this slide, how they spin it to make a topic look good or bad depending on what they are after. This weekend, I had so many mixed emotions about all of the events that's been taking place in our country the last 6 or 7 months. And I was just going through the computer, looking at articles, and I found something that was so relieving to me because for the first time I felt like an individual was talking about our troubled world from both sides equally. This writer, you may have read some of his books. He's the author of Tuesday with Morrie and The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Beautiful stories. Even though you're home, please take time to click on it. I think it is so worth your time to read his article. It's entitled Devastating Week Leaves Us Weary, Worn, and Wondering. And it was just published on Sunday, so I just barely added this into our lesson today to see that all of the issues and the struggles that are happening in our world, we can't just rely on what political party we belong to or what our racial background is. We need to become more open-minded and see things through different eyes. So we are going to, in class today, talk about an issue and hopefully to be more open-minded. And so the topic is panhandling. And I picked that one because all of us do have experiences with panhandlers. It's an emotional topic for sure, but I think it's a topic that we can discuss objectively with and look at it from multiple viewpoints without causing a lot of turmoil in our class, depending on backgrounds and belief systems. So on this slide, there is a link to a documentary that KSL did a few years ago about panhandling. It's about 10, 11 minutes long. And so would you click on the video, and there are some questions on the side to ask yourself about panhandling after you've watched it. The next thing I would like you to do is gain more knowledge. I think it becomes easier to discuss social issues if we are more informed. And so on this slide, I have listed 3 different articles for you to access to learn more about the topic before engaging in that discussion. Pick one and read it. And then finally, for your homework then, I would like you to pick any of the articles that we have, or not articles, any of the topics that we have discussed today. It can be topics from Mitch Albom's article. It can be panhandling. It can be women and higher education. You choose which social issue you'd like to talk about, and I'd like you to go back to those databases and find an article and read what it says about that topic. And then I would like you to Google your topic in just a regular search and find a similar article, but written without an expert in the field. And so then your writing assignment for today will be to ask you to compare the differences between 2 sources that you find, the reliability of one over the other, what makes one more credible than the other, what you liked about one over the other, and to gain more truth from the topic from 2 sources rather than one. And that's all for today. I hope this lesson makes sense to you. Again, if you're confused on anything, please let me know. One final note, make sure you guys have registered for the course. I added a 10-point score into the computer. I went into my roles today. I'm doing this on Tuesday evening, and so this was as about 1 o'clock today. The students who have 10 on there are the ones who have signed up for my class in Slick. If you don't have your 10 points there, it means that as of that time that you were not in my roles. Take care of that. If you have any questions, send me an email, contact Heather Anderson in the Career Center. And I'm going to sign off now, so we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Make sure you sign up for conferences, and miss all of you. See you.